Alright, so today we're going to be discussing a video for the whales. If you want to invest on the Wanderer or Scaramouche, which path should you go for? The Constellations or the Weapons Refinements? We're going to be discussing that on pretty much every single level of investment. You know, if you want to go for like C1 or R1, C2 or R2, stuff like that, we're going to be seeing on which point you should go for the weapon and then on which point you should go for Constellations. And hopefully by the end of the video, you're going to be able to decide. So yeah, let's begin. Alright, so first of all, starting off with the signature weapon. It's going to increase your normal attack speed, which is very valuable on Scaramouche, and then it's going to increase your normal attacks damage. All of these are obviously going to be pretty good for the Wanderer, and they're going to make a big difference. Combine that with a very high base stack, so it's pretty good. I might do another like dedicated video reviewing this weapon on all of the characters and stuff like that, so subscribe if you want to see that. But for right now, it's going to give you a normal attack speed, and it's going to increase your normal attacks damage, and then it's going to give you a high base stack and crit damage from the sub stat. Now, is it worth getting at Refinements 1? It depends on which weapons you have already. So if you have something like the Witsit, you're going to see a damage increase from like 15% to 25%. It's going to depend on like which buff you get from the Witsit, also like which refinements you have on the Witsit and stuff like that. So it kind of depends, but I would say it's much better than the Witsit just for the fact that the Witsit is very inconsistent. You know, you don't have the buff all of the time, and also you don't know which buff you're getting. So like overall average damage over time, this weapon is definitely going to be much better than the Witsit. If you have the Skyward, you're probably going to see like a small increase, probably around like 5% according to what I calculated before. Maybe a little more, a little less depending on like the builds and stuff like that. Obviously, these numbers are not like fixed. It can depend a little bit, but this is like the range. So for example, if you have like the Skyward, I wouldn't really say it's going to be super worth it. It's not going to be like a huge increase. And if you have something like the Lost Prayer, you're going to see around an 18% damage increase. I'm talking about Refinements 1. So yeah, it's also a decent damage increase. The Lost Prayer kind of have like the same problem as the Witsit. It's not super consistent. It's going to take time for you to get the full buffs and stuff like that, which is not really ideal, but it's definitely still a decent weapon. But yeah, if you have the Lost Prayer and you get his signature, you're probably going to see around like an 18 to 20% damage increase. Maybe a little less or a little more, but this is like the range. So yeah, should you get his signature weapon? These are the numbers in front of you. You decide if it's worth it or not. In my opinion, if you have something like the Skyward or the Lost Prayer, it's not really that important. You can probably manage without the signature weapon. But if you don't have a 5-star weapon already, I would say the signature weapon is kind of worth it. But yeah, ultimately the numbers are in front of you and you decide for yourself. Now, moving on to the refinements on the signature weapon. So when you refine your signature weapon, it's going to increase your normal attack speed buff, and it's also going to increase like the normal attacks damage bonus buff. Now, generally speaking, again, it heavily depends on like the builds and stuff like that, but generally speaking, for each refinement, you're going to gain around a 5% damage increase. So like R2 is going to be better than R1 with around 5%. So overall, from refinements 1 to refinements 5, we're going to see around like a 20% damage increase, which in my opinion is not really like super good, especially with the weapons banner and stuff like that. I would say it's not really worth it. But yeah, again, the numbers are in front of you and you decide. Now, moving on to the Wanderer's Constellations. So this is like the table of the constellations. These are like the quick calculations I made. I'm not really sure if it's super accurate, but generally this is the range because I wasn't really sure how to implement some things on his constellations. But generally speaking, as I said, this is going to be like the range of the numbers. It's not going to be far out. So C1 is going to increase your damage by around 7% from C0. The damage increase from C2 is going to be around 12%. C3 is going to be around 3%. C4 is probably going to be around 12%, C5 5%, and finally C6 is going to be a 25% jump. Now, obviously the first thing you're going to notice is that all of the constellations pretty much are going to have a higher damage increase than the weapons refinements. Almost all of them, except for like C3. The damage jump from C0 to C6 is going to be around 85%, so it's almost double the damage. Now, another thing to take into account is going to be C6 Farazan, because if you're wishing for his constellations, you're going to be wishing on the banner, so you have a very high chance to get C6 Farazan. And the damage increase from C0 to C6 Farazan is going to be around 22%. So if you have C0 Farazan and C6 Farazan, you're going to have a 22% damage increase, which in my opinion is kind of huge. And generally, you definitely want to use Farazan with Scaramouche, so that's something to take into account. Now, I know it's not really guaranteed to get C6 Farazan, but if you're wishing for like C2, C3, it's pretty much guaranteed, unless you have like very bad luck. So yeah, that's another thing to take into account. If you go for his Constellations, you're also going for Farazan's Constellations, which means more damage. So yeah, final conclusion, as I said, the numbers are in front of you, you decide for yourself. But generally speaking, in my opinion, I would say just get his signature weapon at Refinements 1. Then after that, just go for the Constellations. Don't go for any refinements on his weapons. In my opinion, they're not really worth it. And again, that's if you decided to whale in the first place. He's gonna be fine even at C0 with like the Wits or something like that. So none of this is necessary. I'm just talking about if you want to whale, this is the way to whale. But yeah, that was the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. If you want to say anything, leave it in the comments, and see y'all in the next video. Peace.